About a month and a half ago, I made a video called Why It's Important to Talk About Free Will, where I explained the implications of believing or not believing in free will when it comes to deciding how to structure society. And in this video, I got a comment that talked about the worries of not believing in free will, and it goes like this. If you question free will, why stop and not also question your basic values, for example, your will to live, and just destroy ourselves in the process? Just emotionally, there is no free will reeks of nihilism. And this is a worry that I hear often being brought up when I talk about free will. So in this video, I want to talk about, does not believing in free will always lead to nihilism? And if it does, or if it does just sometimes, what are the consequences of going down the path of nihilism? So first, let's start by defining what nihilism is. So nihilism has many definitions, but most of the time they encompass the same feelings, which are meaninglessness and emptiness. So let me describe to you the three main types of nihilism. So there's the existential nihilism, which is the notion that the world is without meaning or purpose. Given this circumstance, existence itself, all action, suffering, and feeling is ultimately senseless and empty. So for example, if we're a product of evolution and we're just a product of natural selection, which is environmental filtration and random variations, the reason why we're here is just because of dumb luck. So there's no deeper meaning to life other than the one you might create for yourself. The second one is moral nihilism, which is the absence of any unarguable values or behaviors we must or should adopt. So moral nihilism is the belief that there's no objective moral fact, and therefore the philosophical and psychological implication of this nihilism suggests accepting shared non-absolute values as good enough. So the only way we can have shared moral values is by seeing which one we share the most and accepting it not as something objective, but something as good enough. And the last one is cosmic nihilism, which is how the universe is completely indifferent to our daily lives, thus reinforcing the argument that nothing we do matter at all, so why bother believing in anything or anyone? Because at the end of the day, we're just a tiny little dot in the almost infinite universe, and so if we solve world hunger tomorrow, what does it matter if, like, at the end of the day we're just all going to die someday? So that's cosmic nihilism. So now let's see if the belief in no free will always lead to those types of nihilism that we've just seen. So now what I'll do is I'll graph the main groups that don't believe in free will within the free will debate, and then we'll see if they always lead to nihilism. So let's first start by separating those groups into two main categories. The first one is dualism, which is the belief that immaterial things exist. So for example, a soul, a life force, an immaterial mind, consciousness that is outside of your brain. They believe that at least one of those things exists, or all of those things exist. And then there's materialism, which is the belief that the only thing that exists are things that can be measured. So for example, although radio waves, you can't see them with your eyes, you can measure them, therefore it exists. So in the dualist camp, there's a belief that is called theological determinism. And it's the belief that because God is all-powerful and all-knowing, he knows everything that you will do. And because he created you, you are determined by him. So does theological determinism lead to nihilism? Well, not really, because their meaning comes from God because God created them. So meaning, God. And their morality also comes from God. Therefore, it is objective. So for them, although they don't believe in free will, they are not nihilist. Now in the dualist camp, there's also a belief called epiphenomenalism, which is the belief that consciousness is something that is immaterial, but consciousness is determined by material conditions. So your consciousness, your mental states are determined by your genes, your environment, and everything else around you. Now, does epiphenomenalism always lead to nihilism? Well, I don't think we have enough information to conclude that. I don't think it always leads to nihilism. I could imagine some person that believe that there's some deeper meaning because they also believe in things that are immaterial. So, you know, it's very unpredictable. You would need way more information. Now, for materialism, usually people who believe in materialism also believe in physical laws, and those physical laws usually lead to determinism. Now, determinism is the belief that the universe is determined by physical laws. So if you took a snapshot of the universe at any time and you could calculate every single things in the universe and had a perfect understanding of the physical laws, you could predict the past and the future of that universe. Now, determinism and also materialism doesn't always lead to no free will. Sometimes, I won't get into it today, but sometimes it leads to free will. Same things for them. They are called compatibilists. So compatibilists are those that believe that determinism and free will is compatible. But there are some people that don't believe that free will and determinism are compatible. Therefore, they are called very originally incompatibilists. Now, the thing is, if you believe that everything is determined by physical laws, that means that you don't really believe in any deeper meaning, any deeper reason why we're here on Earth. And also, it can lead some of the times to the conclusion that morality is subjective. The other times it leads to moral realism, which is the belief that morality is something that exists out there. So now, if there's no deeper meaning, if morality is subjective, and if you don't have free will, then this should lead to nihilism. Now, looking at this, does the belief in no free will always lead to nihilism? Well, here, as you can see, there's one path, or two perhaps, that doesn't lead to nihilism, where you believe that you are determined by God. But if you're a materialist that don't believe in free will, that will usually lead you to nihilism. So for me, I would be a materialist that believe in physical laws, determinism, that believe that there's no deeper meaning, that also believe that morality is subjective, and finally, that is an incompatibilist and that doesn't believe in free will. So ultimately, I would be a nihilist here. Now, when I say this to people, it oftentimes leads to this question. If there's no deeper meaning in the universe, if morality is subjective, and if there's no free will, why don't you just unalive yourself? Because at the end of the day, nothing matters. So being alive or not, nothing should matter to you, right? And this question, I think, is very interesting to answer, and it echoes the same worries that the person at the beginning in the comment said. So let's talk about why exactly don't I just unalive myself if there's no deeper meaning, if morality is subjective, and if there's no free will? So to explain this, let me start by giving you an analogy. So this is The Starry Night by Vincent van Gogh, and it's considered to be one of the most beautiful paintings out there. But its beauty is subjective. And I say that because one of the reasons why so many people find it beautiful is because it was made specifically for the average human eye, whether consciously or unconsciously by the painter. Because if you couldn't see any colors, you wouldn't be able to experience the same beauty as I do. Same thing if you had myopia but didn't have access to glasses, or were colorblind, or had a primitive eye that could only see light and shadows. Now, this is not an accurate depiction of it, but you get the point, where you wouldn't be able to experience the same beauty as someone like me with an average human eye can. And it goes the other way around too. If you could see way more of the light spectrum than we humans can, if you could see the entire spectrum of light, this painting might look completely different. So the beauty of the painting is subjective because it was made for the average human eye. Now, does this fact make this painting any less beautiful to me? I would say no, because the only thing that matters is whether I find it beautiful and whether the people around me find it beautiful. That's the only thing that matters. And I think this is a great analogy for morality. I think morality comes from evolution because it was something that allowed us to survive more effectively. Now, the fact that it was created by evolution probably makes it subjective, because had we evolved a different way, we probably would have different moral values. So for example, most of us feel like we ought to protect our children, and if you see a parent being negligent or abusing their child, then you feel like it's wrong and compelled to do something about it. And if you saw a mother eating her own baby, you would be outraged by this behavior. But hamster mothers do that. They eat their own offsprings when she's stressed, when she doesn't have enough nutrients, when she gave birth to way too many babies, or when one of her offspring is sick. She eats her babies. But that was probably, during the evolution of the hamster, the best evolution strategy to survive. So had we evolved in different conditions, our moral values might have been different. But does the fact that morality is subjective make the feeling that I have when I see a parent abusing their child any less real? I would say no. Again, like the painting, the only thing that matters is the fact that I believe that it's wrong or right, and that most other humans around me believe that it's wrong or right. Now, of course, if morality was just this objective thing, it would make everything much easier, but I think it's just wishful thinking. Unfortunately, because we humans have evolved together, I think most of us share core moral values. Now, when it comes to my will to live, it's the same thing. The reason why I get up in the morning, if evolution is true, is because my ancestors, I have a long lineage of ancestors that decided to wake up and that had this drive to do things and to survive. And if they didn't have those characteristics, I wouldn't be here making this video and talking to you. So now again, just because I'm not freely choosing to have this will to live, does that make my will to live any less real? I don't think so. I think at the end of the day, even if we don't have free will, even if there's no deeper meaning to life, even if morality is just a subjective thing for humans, I still feel joy when I see a baby laugh. I still feel awe when I see a good magic trick. I still feel sadness when I watch an emotional movie, and I still feel pain when I lose a family member. So despite the meaninglessness, I still feel all of those emotions, and I think that's the only thing that matter, and I think it doesn't make those emotions any less real. So let me know what you think about it in the description down below. Thank you for watching, and I'll see you next time.